On May 10, 1994, Nelson Mandela was inaugurated President of the Republic of South Africa, thus ending the country's policy of apartheid. F.W. de Klerk, the nation's previous president, was elected Vice President. Their uneasy alliance to reform South Africa had begun in 1990 when de Klerk freed Mandela, leader of the African National Congress, after 27 years of imprisonment. The apartheid system of institutionalized racial segregation and discrimination had been formalized as South African government policy in 1948 by the country's National Party. It enshrined segregation and white supremacy in law, classifying citizens by race and restricting their movement, housing, and economic opportunities. How exactly had that system of apartheid worked, and how would lives be changed with Nelson Mandela's election? As a child, Joel Smith Brown grew up in the South Africa of the 1980s and early 90s. In this interview with correspondent Tim Gore, he shares personal examples of what it was like living under apartheid.
You grew up in South Africa, but you're not a native South African.
I am not native. My parents are actually both British. My dad is from just outside of Manchester, in a town called Worksop. My mother is actually from Sheffield, England. My parents immigrated to South Africa, which is very awkward, in 1981 to help fight apartheid.
And you obviously lived under the system of apartheid for how long?
Till I was 9.
Give the students some description, some actual examples of how that played out in your life.
It would be very similar to what America had in the sense of segregation and integration, just on a quite a bit different level. South Africa, it wasn't based on whether or not you were black or white. It was based on like how fair-skinned or how dark you were. So me being black, I would be a black person, and then you would have a colored person, and then you would have someone who was Indian, and then you would have someone who was Chinese and would be considered honorary white. And what that did was there were basically certain places that you could go in town. There were certain restaurants that you could eat at. You could not go to school with people who were Indian or people who were Chinese or people who were white. So the general basis of it was to keep the population as segregated as possible. Like the law stated that black people could not learn the language of white people, that you could not learn how to read English, things of that nature. And it also stated that white people could not learn Swahili. Interracial marriages were outlawed in, I think, like 1950. If you were caught fraternizing with someone of a different ethnicity other than business, such as if they were your maid or they were your housemate, then you could be imprisoned. When I was a young kid, we were playing in a neighborhood, and there was a maid who had just gotten off of work, and she did not have a color card, or what we would call like a pass book that told you like what your color category was and where you could go. She was taken away by the police. Well, they dragged her, they beat her, put her in the truck and took her away because she did not have a color card and she was in the wrong part of town.
So you had to have that color card with you at all times?
Yes. If you did not have your pass book, then you could be arrested at any point in time. You would actually see them driving, maybe in the American sense, like a paddy wagon around town, just looking for people, and they would randomly ask you, you know, do you have your color card, do you have your documentation that you're actually allowed here? So they would do checks all times of night, and the curfew for blacks was actually 9 p.m., so you couldn't be out after 9 p.m. in the city anyway, so they were always driving around looking.
Now you've got an image, you brought us some signage, I think?
Yes.
So this that I'm bringing up here, this is for use by white persons. It says, now I noticed the top of it's in English.
Yes.
The bottom language is this Afrikaans?
That's Afrikaans. And the issue with this whole thing is that they did not teach you how to read English or Afrikaans. So if you were black and you were walking, or you were colored or whatever, and you were walking through town, to read this sign would be impossible. So then the police would arrest you after that point because you did not know that this place was not, that you weren't allowed in this place because you couldn't read. And even the pass books were written in Afrikaans, so you did not know where you were allowed to go, where you were not allowed to go.
Very insidious system.
Yes, so I mean, in retrospect, it's very hard to not get arrested unless you know someone who's very fair-skinned. Like for me, my father was very fair-skinned, so there were lots of things that I could get away with, you could say, because I would spend time with my father.
On December 10, 1993, Nelson Mandela and F.W. de Klerk were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for their work dismantling South African apartheid.